Hi everyone, in this video I want to show you a game between Magnus Carlsen and Mickey Adams. The game was played in 2017 London Chess Classic round 7. Let's see the game. White starts with f4, the bird opening. As we know, in the opening, pawn moves are good only if they help us to develop our pieces. Because of this reason, f4 move is not good. Black replied with 5, and knight to f3 developed the knight towards the center, controlling d4 and e5. Knight to f6 and g3. White wants to place his light square bishop on the long diagonal. G6 and black does the same. He wants to control the long diagonal. Bishop to g2 and bishop to g7. And both players castled. White opening looks like a reverse Dutch Leningrad. d3 controlling c4 and e4 squares. And c5, black is placing another pawn in the center. c3 controlling b4 and d4, and these moves are going to develop. Knight to c6, another developing move by black, and knight to a3. The knight is developed on the edge of the board. He might jump to b5 or c2. Rook to e8. With this move, black prepares e5, striking in the center. White replied with knight to f4, moving the same piece in an open. The knight is on the edge of the board, preparing to push e4. White should have continued with his development of his pieces. Now black needs to develop his light square bishop. In the game, black played b6, intending to place the bishop on the long diagonal. e4, d takes on e4, black takes, and white doesn't want to take with the pawn because the queens will be traded. That's why white played queen to a4, attacking the knight, and here black sacrificed the knight and took on the queen. As we can see, black has a passed pawn on the e file. White took the knight, bishop to d7, attacking the queen. Black hopes to catch the queen or make a draw by attacking it. With this move, black finishes opening. The king is safe, rooks are connected, and all other minor pieces are developed. In the middle game, black needs to attack by bringing his pieces into opponent territory, and black did this by playing knight to g4. Black threatens knight to e3, forking the rook and the bishop. Another way was to attack the queen from c7 with rook e to c8, and in this case queen to e5, black wants to play knight to g4, attacking the queen, but first he needs to protect the pawn from e4, and he can do this by playing bishop to c6, rook to e1, attacking the pawn one more time, queen to d7, f5 making room for the queen to escape, knight to h5, and the queen is trapped. So in the game, black played knight to g4, rook to e1, preventing knight to e3, attacking for a second time the e4 pawn. And here black continued his attack aggressively, sacrificing his bishop with bishop to d4 check. Maybe before playing this move, black should have pushed the queen out from the game with rook a to c8. And for example, if the queen takes on a7, now bishop to d4 is stronger after queen takes on d4, and if white kings goes to a, we have a smother mate with knight to f2, king to g1, knight to h3 check, king to h1, queen to g1 check, rook takes. So in the game, black took first with the bishop, a check, white took with the pawn, queen check, and white blocked the check with the bishop, and knight takes on e3, black took, and white comes into the center with the queen, wanting queens. f5, protecting the pawn. Another way was to defend the pawn with the bishop by playing the bishop c6, or take the light square bishop with the knight. With this move, white decreased the position of his bishop. The bishop is looking at the pawn of chain. You may say that white removed his bishop from the attack, but his bishop is out of the game for the moment, and the white king is not feeling very safe. Best was to improve the position of his knight with knight to f3, attacking the queen. Another reason why he played this move was to look at the undefended bishop from d7. As we can see, the bishop, the other bishop. In some line, black threatens to take the pawn with the rook, and the bishop from d7 will drop. In the game we had knight to c2, check from the queen, forcing the queen trade. Queen takes on d4, knight takes on d4. In this position, white is a piece up, but black has passed pawns for the free piece. The one from e4 and the one from c5. Also, black has a pawn majority on the queen side. In this position, white exploited the pin of the light square bishop and took on e4 with the rook. F takes on e4 and bishop takes on d7, and to d8, attacking the bishop, and the bishop goes back to a4. So white gave the exchange for a piece and a pawn, and the pass pawn from the e file cannot be helped to promote easily. Black weaknesses are the two double pawns from the e file, and in the game black tried to get rid of one of the weaknesses by pushing e5. Rook to e1, activating the rook, and black took on f4, g takes on f4, and black started to use his pawn majority from the queen side in order to create a pass pawn. In the endgame, one of the plan is to push our pass pawns, and black played a6, followed with b5 and c4. Bishop to d1, b5, knight to b1, white pieces are pushed back to the first line, and knight to f5, trying to exchange the knight. And white took recapture with a g-pawn, to bringing the king into the center, and black does the same with king to f7, bishop to e2, controlling d3 square to d6, intending to go after the h2 isolated pawn with e6. h4, white wants to meet h6 with h5, defending the pawn with the bishop. c4, black starts to use his pawn majority, and he's pushing the candidate pawn. e4, attack black chain, trying to provoke some weaknesses. Rook to c8, place rook behind the candidate pawn, which is a good move. White took on b5 and black captured, and knight to a3, attacking b5 backward pawn. Rook to d5, defending the pawn, and rook to c1, placing the rook on the same file with the other black rook. To c5, black to push c3, knight to c2, bringing the knight to a better square, looking to go to b4 or d4 or to e3. And here, if black pushes c3, white can reply with b4, attacking the rook. In the game, black continued with rook to a8, intending to go to a2, attacking the weak pawn from b2. Knight to e3 and rook a to c8. If black would have gone to a2, white can reply with b4, attacking the rook, and the pawn cannot take en passant due to the free rook from c5. So black is forced to go back with the rook, and white can grab the f pawn with knight to f5. Here black can continue with rook to d8, trying to enter into the second rank with the rook on d2. Knight to g3, defending the bishop and attacking e4 pawn. Rook d to d2 and king e3. The position is equal. So that's why in the game black continued with rook a to c8 and h5, controlling g6, and this weak pawn is protected by the bishop. King to e6, bringing the king into the center, and h6, fixing black weakness from h2. The king goes to grab the pawn, and the h pawn will be a pass pawn. White needs to defend this pawn. The only way to do it is with the rook to h1 or to the rook to a1, protecting laterally. Going to h1 is not okay because the rook is too passive and black can start pushing his pawns from the queen side, creating a pass pawn. In the game, white played rook to a1, trying to go to a6, 4, trying to create the pass pawn on the c file. Rook to a6 check, king to e7, rook to h7 check, king to f6, and king to e1. White doesn't want to repeat move and draw, and comes to with the king on the queen side, trying to help in the defense. b3 to b7, looking at the b pawn. If black pushes c3, white takes, and the white rook is well placed behind the passed pawn. Another idea is to play rook to b4, attacking the c4 pawn for a third time, once with the rook then the bishop. White cannot take on h7 because black pushes the c3 pawn and then place a rook on the b file, and black pawn will queen very soon. So let's see that line: rook takes h7, c3, b takes on c3, and rook to b8, and the pawn is queening. For example, knight to c4. Another way is to give the knight for the pawn reaches b2. So that's why in the game rook to b7 was played, and king to e6. Rook to b6 check, king to e7, and to b4, threatening to take the pawn. To c6, attacking the pawn 6, and the bishop takes the pawn. A rook, and black has a pass pawn on the h file. And after white takes the pawn from the b3, we can see that white also has a pass pawn on the b file. Into d8, black king gets away from any potential check from the knight. Rook to b8 check, king to c7, attacking the rook, and 8. And the rook goes behind the backward pawn, attacking it twice with the knight and the rook. Rook to h3, attacking the knight, which is the defender of the bishop, and white gives check with the knight. King to b7 and rook to f7 check, and the king goes to b8. The problem with this move is that black king cut off on the 8th rank. Better was to go forward to c6, attacking the threatening to give the rook for the knight and the bishop. King to c6, b3, protecting the bishop like in the game, and black gives the rook for the 2 pieces, and in this endgame black is an extra pawn. So king to b8 and defending the bishop. Rook to h2. Also the white king is cut off on the first rank. And another idea for black is to go rook to a5, threatening mate on a1, knight to b4, preventing a rook to a5 due to knight to c6, forking the king and the rook, king to c8, knight to a6, attacking the rook. If black tries to go for the mate, he will lose the rook from a5. For example, after rook to a5, here the knight, the bishop and the rook form a good team. Let's see how. Bishop to a6 check, king to d8 forced, rook to d7 check, king to e8, knight to c7 check, rook to f8, to f7 check, king to g8, and rook takes on f5 check, and grabbing the rook from a5. So in the game, black played rook c6, attacking the knight, and rook to f8 check, to b7, and white picks up the exchange with bishop to d5, king takes on x6, bishop takes on c6, and king to b6, attacking the bishop. And after bishop to d7, black resigned because f5 pawn drops, and also the e4 and the h7 pawns are attacked, and white has an extra piece. So I hope that you learned something from this game. Please watch other games from my channel, and if you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.